Oh, she's gonna zoom in.
I don't know.
She was going to try to.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably not the most pleasant day to come from Boston.
I mean.
All right, we call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you all to the City of Oleana Zoning and Housing Board of Appeals. There will be housekeeping issues to deal with. First call the roll, please.
Chairman,
Here.
Vice Chair Taylor,
Here.
Commissioner Beth.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Reese.
Here.
Commissioner Lopez. Here.
I look for a motion to approve our minutes of August 25th, 2021. Moved by Peter, second by Jim. Are there any further comments, questions, or corrections? Any objections? Hearing none, we will accept by acclamation. Terry, any correspondence?
No correspondence that's not related to a particular application.
Okay. All right, so we have 4 items on the agenda tonight, and in order to try to be respectful of people's time, we may take these out of order. So by a show of hands, who is here for applicant number 1? The Ivy Court. Got the one. Okay. Second would be 54 Eastern. 2. 3 is Saab, applicant 3. That sounds like the limit.
And that's who your online attendance is here for.
And we have how many online, Karen?
Just the one.
Just one for the same issue. Correct. Okay. So then what we'll do is we'll take number 3 first. Number 1 second. Third. Fourth is to remain where it is. All right, Mr. Ranieri, would you like to explain to the board what you'd like to do, please?
Sure. My name is Dave Ranieri. I'm actually here in support of the Oneonta School District, the OHS alumni, the current Oneonta High School senior class, and the Oneonta community. I decided when I was here all my life and was attending Oneonta State as a student athlete, and then as working as a coach, when I was out recruiting throughout the state of New York, it always amazed me when I saw entry signs at high schools and colleges, how visible they were, attractive they were, and welcoming they were. And every time I go up and down East Street and try to visually see, but you can't see our high school sign, you can't read it, and you can't see it at night because it's not lit. So I took it upon myself to start organizing the right people and going through the right steps to see about implementing a digital sign at the same location. So I first talked to Tom Brindley, who's right next to me, the superintendent, to see what he thought of the idea. He actually had it on his docket to do down the road. So he was very supportive of that, as well as his daughter has done a lot of the paperwork for me, and I appreciate that very much. Then I went to the senior class to Kelly Tavarone, the advisor, and some of the senior class officers are here. Carter Mackey, Seamus Catella, Emma Bitterman, and Maddie Henson, all were extremely supportive to take it on as a senior class project for this year, 2022, to be completed by the spring. In fact, it was only less than 2 weeks from when I met with them. They helped Vince Fodi and I at the charity golf tournament for the alumni raise over half of the money that we needed in pledges from the alumni for the sign. Then I went to Steve Yearley, who I know, code enforcement. We met there in the fall to look over the sign, talk about measurements, location. He said, obviously I had to get approval from you, but he said to pretty much not change the size of this current sign, not to increase it in height, although we did increase a little bit in width. But we didn't want to increase it in height because we're worried about the buses seeing over the sign as they were coming up onto East Street. Then Tim Catella, who's volunteered to help us a lot, met with John Williams, Parks and Streets, talked about the electrical, how it was gonna be tied in. He didn't see a problem with that. Then I met with Greg Mattice, just recently, who happens to be an Oneonta High School alumnus. And he said he was very supportive of it, but obviously it had to be approved by you before he could help further. And I've been talking to many of alumni, businesses, and it is just amazing, and it makes me proud to, live here all my life, that the amount of donations we're receiving in labor, materials, and money for this support of this sign is just truly amazing, that this community is coming through to do this. I have additional sketches if you don't have what's in front of you. The timetable of this is to secure the funding. No tax dollars will be used for this sign. Secure the funding and everything we needed by March, which includes labor, materials, and time from people in the community to construct the sign. And then begin the sign pillars and the sign itself in March. Hopefully have it done April, May, depending on obviously the weather. So hopefully, I'm hoping that the board will approve this, and I think it's much needed to have something where people can see a digital sign. And the reason why we wanted to go digital, that the high school and middle school can actually have a calendar of events at a daily basis or weekly basis. So people know when they're driving in there, if there's special events going on, they will see that at a daily basis. If the thought of the spray of light at night, it's already been considered that the sign can be dimmed at night or actually be shut off at nighttime if it's a concern to the neighbors. We've already taken that in consideration. Any questions?
Yes. Want to continue advertising?
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In order to maintain some decorum here, all the questions will be directed to the board,
Okay.
not in between the applicant and any of the residents that are here. The first thing we're going to do is poll the board and see if they have any questions, and then we'll go to you guys. Peter.
Are you willing to restrict the sign to strictly school functions, school uses? So that there's never going to be a sign up there that says, we get our insurance from this company, or this is the guy that mows the lawns, the contractor. It will be strictly school, directly school-related business.
If I may, schools are not allowed to solicit. So that would be the case always. It would just be school-related information.
My only question.
Perfect. That's it, Pete. Jeff.
Provisions for maintenance. As far as
The sign itself?
taking care of the sign, if the LED displays illuminates vandalism, that kind of thing. Mr. Patella, you,
I just, if it would be routine maintenance, that would have to be coordinated with who we're purchasing the board from, get a list of here are the do's and don'ts for the operation of this board. And then get with the facility staff to make sure that there's a plan in place and also for landscaping around it. We don't want it to just turn into a weed area there, but as far as the operation of the board, it will also be operated remotely. Somebody can do it from their phone, an administrator. So like when we speak to dimming or shutting it off, that could be handled that way. So I think we would rely heavily on who the board is being purchased from, and then we come up with a routine maintenance plan.
thank you.
Jimmy?
As far as your plan to dim it and to shut it off, or to do you have a certain time period that we can understand that you're gonna do this?
I basically was going to hear from you and the neighbors to see and actually work with Tom on what is an appropriate time.
So like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. is that actually?
I would. think
Seems
that-
more-
And I would almost think maybe even a little earlier than 11 p.m. I don't think there's a lot of traffic on East Street after, when we're nearing that time. I'm not entirely sure that we would need that sign on for that long.
But you might want to know if you have a school function.
Yes,
Yes,
You
yes.
need exceptions to that, so before you agree.
Right.
7 to 11.
Right.
You might need something else.
Do you want 6 to 11, you know, what would you want?
You know, we have students that do arrive, you know, around 6:45. So if we were in maybe the 6:30 to 10 PM range, I think that would be wonderful.
Unless you had some school function before or after that time.
I know we would never have one before, and
Yes, sir.
and rarely are we, you know, anything, rarely are we on campus after 10 PM. It's a rarity.
The only reason we're directing that thought is, you know, once the decision is made and if the board agrees, but that's the rules you'll live by, which code enforcement will then enforce.
Yeah.
So if you foresee the opportunity that you might need it after 10 PM, now would be the time to say for school activities only.
Sure.
And only for the duration of those activities.
Before we go any further, there is a logo above the current design of the digital sign. It's a circle on yours, but it's actually a square. That's going to be illuminated as well with LED. That can also be dusk to dawn, if so, or we can decide, this is just a thought, we turn off the digital, leave that on so people know where the high school is. It would draw off a lot less light, but that's just my thought.
No, I can. Is there any objection to that?
Nope.
Jeff?
No.
Listen, your thoughts, comments, questions?
I have no further questions now. They actually had asked the same as I was gonna ask.
Okay. And you resolved it? Yes, sir. All right, so at this point, we will take input from the community. If you'd like to speak, sir, please give your name and address for the record.
Name is William Cornwell. My wife Susan, we live at 127 East Street, directly across from the high school.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm not opposed to a sign. I am strongly opposed to a digital sign. I have, over the last 20 years, watched the neighborhood getting more and more commercialized with first the student rentals and then the short-term rentals. I think digital signs make it look like a business area. They're jarring to the eye. I don't want to be sitting on my front porch in the evening watching these lights flicker on and off. I don't see a purpose for it. I think everybody pretty much knows where the high school is, and if they don't, you could have a stationary sign. And I just don't see good things happening from there on. I'm strongly opposed to it.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Yes, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
You can, we'll call on you in a moment.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Denise Michelson on 142 East Street. I have comments from myself, from my neighbor, and a brief disapproval from another neighbor.
And we will be happy to take any comments you have to yourself, and your neighbors either need to present themselves or submit a letter. Do you have a letter from them?
I have a letter from one neighbor and the other one is not willing to come out because of rain and age and other infirmities. So I believe it would be only fair, just, humane, and pleasant, helpful for you to accept a very brief comment from that other neighbor.
Go ahead.
And my neighbor who gave me a letter wants me to read it. So I will read that.
Okay.
First briefly, Ms. Peggy Sarah Lima at 141 East Street, across the street from me, did not receive the notice, and we're wondering why. She rejects this sign. She does not wish to see the sign. For all the reasons that this gentleman cited, I will read the letter from my neighbor and my own last. My neighbor Pam Tosta, 138 East Street. This is her letter, and I have a few copies I can give you, or Terry, or whoever needs it.
Yes, please.
Since moving to our home on East Street, which was about 30 years ago, I believe, for them, we've seen lights added which reflect or shine in our home. The traffic light, a necessary addition, sends green and red lights into our windows and reflects on our neighbors' windows, further shining into our home. The athletic field lights illuminate our whole house so that I can even see cobwebs in the corners. After the leaves drop, we enjoy meals with the scenery of bright blue lights from the sign in front of the school. In order to avoid the ambiance of downtown Las Vegas, I strongly urge the dropping of the proposed sign. We are a neighborhood of homes, not a commercial area. Any sign involving bright lights will greatly impact our lives. Many of the residents are elderly, and lights such as those proposed will cause problems for cataract eyes and can cause health problems for those with strokes, mini strokes, dementia, or epilepsy. The proposed sign will glare strongly into our homes, being very invasive. Such lights will reflect off our walls, exposing us to people driving by or walking. This is an infringement of our privacy and a danger to our safety. There are many versions of signs that do not require lighting, but would be noticeable and attractive. The proposed sign is definitely not attractive, but is extremely noticeable to the neighbors. Do not allow this intrusive sign. Pamela Fitch Tosta, 138 East Street. Reggie, or whoever's taking this. I am Denise Michelson, 142 East Street. In 2006, I purchased my house next to the high school and middle school. I knew sports would be loud and illuminated. I did not know music would be obnoxiously loud during practice or juvenile football. I contacted the school to lower that noise. The proposed sign is obnoxious. A digital sign that frequently changes its message, its color, its patterns. It runs all day and part of the night. We just heard 20 hours, almost 20 hours a day. It will distract drivers on East Street, a well-used road. Given the speeds we, the residents, already see documented by the 2 speed radar signs, drivers do not need more distractions. We've experienced city common council ignoring, waiving, deleting zoning laws to build a hilltop, which had many, many people objecting, and the hideous monstrosity here on D Street. While I do recognize the excellence of our school district, which was mostly, if not entirely, great for my 2 children who both attended grades 7 to 12 here, I see zero reason for digital advertising on East Street. There is a digital sign next to the high school building. It notifies report cards, holidays, concerts, etc., not sports. And digital sign at Foothills changes constantly, and it is obnoxious. I don't know the plan or curriculum for this digital sign. I don't care. A few years ago, I was at a Board of Ed meeting where it was Verizon or AT&T requested or offered a cell tower on the S-curve of that building. I told the Board of Ed, Superintendent, and City Council that the decision on that ridiculous and pathetic $2,400 a year offer was not to be made by City Council or Board of Ed, but by myself and my neighbors. I believe at the time it was Mr. Yelich who rejected that offer on our advice, although few Board of Ed members wanted it. This sign at the school is far worse, far more intrusive, far more obnoxious, far more invasive than a cell tower. No, we do not want or endorse or have any interest in a digital sign. Create a new wooden sign. If $20,000 or up to $40,000 has already been raised, use it for education, arts, music, not sports, drama, cooking, diversity training. Seniors 2022 can leave a more humanitarian, caring, enduring legacy, not a glaring digital screen on East Street. Yes, they love their phones and screens. Keep them in their pockets or inside their homes, not on East Street. Keep the fund for a sister or brother school in a poorer part of New York State or other states. Share the wealth, share the joy, not a sign on East Street.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor or in opposition to this application?
Will you be taking the person online first?
We can do that, sure.
May I speak?
Go ahead, Carol.
Hey, hi, good evening, everyone. So I'm just going to read a letter I sent to the clerk of the court today. I think it would be the easiest way. So it says, good evening. My husband and I have been property owners of 123 East Street since July of 2010. We understand the area variance has been requested to post digital signage directly in front of the middle high school's entrance. However, our home sits directly across the street from where this proposed signage may be. The announcement posted in the Daily Star's November 6, 2021 periodical did not provide specific logistics of the proposed signage. Please be advised, so we couldn't make it there to the meeting, and we're very grateful that you're allowing me to speak. Although we are excited for further development of Oneonta City, we will not be appreciative if digital signage directly facing our home will interfere with our right to enjoy our property and or possibly affect our future home's property value. We currently enjoy an unobstructed view of an awesome park, have 0 lights reflecting into our living room and upper front bedrooms, and wish to remain that way. These are concerns that I'm presenting to the board as well as Mr. Ranieri. And also, I understand Mr. Ranieri's goal, and I think it's amazing that he's done all of this and has rounded up the community to partake in this venture. However, we remain hopeful of a favorable outcome of the proposed area variance for all parties involved. We love Oneonta, our committed property owners, and look forward to making Oneonta a better place to live for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Who else?
Hi, my name is Vince Fodi. I think before a decision is made, that you really have to look at the specs. The specs call out pretty clearly that the sign will be facing north-south, so it won't be facing directly at any house, directly across from it. As far as the 4 or 5 students that are sitting in the back, I hate to have their spirits dampened by all this, because they thought out that this sign was something that they thought, that their class thought would be something very favorable, and quite honestly, the largest project, the largest gift left behind by a class to put up a sign that every sign in the state, every school in the state pretty much has a digital sign. Back to being reasonable and willing to work with folks, we are willing, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but as far as the dimming of the light or turning the light off at night, so it won't be blinking into anybody's light. Again, the sign's gonna be facing north and south, not east and west into anyone's houses. And anybody that really see any of the light reflection would be those that would be the 2 or 3 houses that would be any up the street isn't gonna fare any reflection, in my opinion, especially if it's dim or shut off. So as an alumnus of Oneonta High School and a community member, I think this is a great project that they're undertaking, and I would be in favor of it.
Anyone else want to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Maureen Artali. I live at 129 East, which is exactly what Vince just described, 2 or 3 houses up from where the sign is going. I just wanted to share that we are enthusiastic about the addition of the sign. And I think part of our excitement is we do have 2 children that are in school. And to me, this is just another way for the community to show their support of the school system here. I have experience with LED lighting because I work up at the college where, of course, we have these similar signs, not as nice as the one that's being shared here today. But their ability to be dimmed and to be turned off as needed and necessary, and the accommodations that are being described fit perfectly with our lifestyle. I mean, we have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. So, and to be honest, our 9-year-old's bedroom is the one that would probably be most affected by the lights. Having them go off at a certain time would be pretty comfortable for us, and we would be in agreement with that. I think what we're seeing here is a lot of community action, and I applaud these students for coming today and seeing exactly how the governmental system works, either in their favor or potentially not in their favor. But this is a show of support for the school district that keeps this city afloat and keeps the pride in this community that is very much in need. I will also say that I have, in an earlier career, did a lot of travel to high schools. I worked in the admissions field for quite some time, and we are one of the few schools that do not have good signage preparing people to enter the school. I will also say, as somebody who again lives 2 to 3 driveways up from the school at 129, which is 130 is the high school, people always miss that driveway and they're continuously turning around at our house because their GPS says 130 is across from 129. I think that having that signage for people who are visiting our schools, whether they're here for community activities such as Down and Decker dance shows at the school, music events, athletics, they need to be able to see it and identify it. And I think it's important for our students to have that sense of identity also. So
Right.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Anyone else? In favor or opposition?
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
Thomas Brinley, Superintendent of Schools. I've spent 13 years as an administrator in the high school, and I can tell you that I've never seen a group of students rally around a project such as this, not only the students, but the community as well, the Alumni Association. And, you know, on any given day, we have about 800 students come to that building, who come there, they work hard, they play hard, they represent not only our school and their families, but our community very well. And if we have the occasion to highlight some of those accomplishments and those events that they participate in and work so hard for, and let the community know to come out and support them as well. I just think it would do wonders for, you know, these students that are coming there every day to see the things that they're participating in on that screen and know that they're cared for and they're supported in a special way. So that being said, I also understand and appreciate our neighbors on East Street very, very much. But I'm hoping that, you know, certainly hoping that this project can move forward, you know, in a way that we know will bring great pride to our community and our school. So thank you for considering it.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Got an opportunity to speak now. Soon we're going to close public comments on it, move to the board deliberations. But does anyone else that has any comments, any thoughts, anything they want to get out?
Can I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
I understand the comments of the people in favor of supporting our district. I believe it is possible to have a sign with some lighting, but not this digital constant motion, constant movement, constant changing sign. You can illuminate a sign right there so that people know where the high school is, which would be probably helpful. But you don't need a digital sign that's constantly changing. And I support all the programs of the school. It's just you don't need a digital rotating, glaring, blue screaming into people north and south. You know, somebody saying, oh, it's only north and south. Well, yeah, we're north and other people are south. It's not going to work. A minimal sign, not a glaring, changing, bragging sign. It's a great school district. No glaring, changing digital sign, please.
Thank you. Anyone else? Make sure everybody has enough time to say their piece.
I'd just like to add one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm known for this, just so we're clear. The other thing that came to mind for me is the school district runs the food pantries for the students and families out of the high school. And being able to have a sign that does have those rotational messages would allow the community to have a better sense of when the food pantries are available for drive-through, for food pickup and those types of things. And there were the vaccinations that were held there. Having a sign that can rotate that information just again contributes to the community by letting them know what services are being offered to our school district.
Oh, if there's no other comments on this application, we will close the public comment this time, and we'll move to board deliberation. Peter, do you have any other questions or comments? For the
Yeah, I
applicant?
have questions. How frequently will the message be changed?
I mean, I would imagine that there are specifications in there that we could probably manipulate that in a certain way. And I don't know if it's 30 seconds or a minute, or I'm not sure. There might be preset times in there. I'm not entirely sure about the specifics of the capabilities of the sign. But I would hope that they could be programmed.
If you have some time in mind, Peter, we just add that or write that down, but they are all programmable.
No, I don't.
I mean, I'm not familiar with, educational use of signs, but typically in commercial use, they change every 6 seconds.
Yeah, I think the one I is 18 seconds or something.
I don't know, anyone here that might know? Yes, sir.
Len Carson, City of Oneonta, community member, council member, owner of DC Marketing. We own the digital billboards on ID8. Also kind of known as the sign guy in Oneonta. And I've been working alongside the Oneonta High School alumni membership for this school project, of which I think I couldn't add one more word than this young lady already added. I need to hire her as a public speaker. She did a wonderful job. She hit on all the points that we had talked about, that this beautiful digital sign will be able to do. To Peter's point, New York State Department of Transportation regulates digital signs to be no less than 8 seconds on an interval.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Does that take care of your concern, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, Jack?
To avoid any confusion, is the sign going to be perpendicular or parallel to the road?
It'll be perpendicular to East Street.
Where the sign sits right now.
So one side's facing the water treatment center, so there's no house that's gonna go into on that south side.
And, we get the visions of caustic signs. But with the taste of the school and the community, I would assume that can be adjusted. So it's in good favor of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to advertise the school.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first
The
part.
way you do your signage and the way you do your lights.
Yeah.
That can be controlled in good.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Nothing.
I got a question. What is the controlling point of this sign? Who is the controller?
That's all for the brand. I love it.
I doubt that you want to hear the complaints, it's too bright, it's not bright enough. What is set up for people to be able, outside people be able to contact the school and say, okay, we got a problem here. How can we rectify it? What is the center point going to be? Who's the person, or what is the department? Or have you thought that through?
I'm sure it would be me, because it's reasonable that it would be me. In the district office, I think we like to maintain, open dialogue with our community members. So, I'm sure that any concern would probably come into the district main office. And then, then we could certainly, tend to it from my office, whether it's a programming issue. I understand that programming it will be much easier. It's something that can be done from a smart device, which will make it much more convenient to fix anything quickly. If it's, in greater detail, I'm sure I'd be working with Mr. Carson and those programmers if it was something that was beyond certainly our capability. But any complaints, I'm sure I would want them to come into the district office.
Okay, and you expect to respond to them in some form or fashion?
Absolutely. We want to be good neighbors too.
Can I ask a question?
We close the public comment. Go ahead, you do one.
What pays for the electricity? Who pays for the electricity?
I would make the assumption that it's the school, Mr. Brown.
Yes, that would be correct.
So that's a continuing cost outside of the original cost of the sign, is that right?
That might be an ongoing cost of, $4 or $5, yes, ma'am,
$4 or $5 per what?
per month.
Really?
They're not terribly expensive to operate.
No, they're not.
I have a few.
I have a point I'd like to make.
Yes, sir.
Public schools, educational uses are under New York State law somewhat exempt from zoning law.
We have greater flexibility, yes, sir.
Because the state has deemed that educational uses are very important to communities.
Yes, sir.
So I think we should keep that in mind and carry that forward in anything we do having to do with school systems.
Concur. Thank you, Peter. Anything else from the board? Is there a consensus on the board to either approve or deny the application? So there's a motion to approve made by and seconded by Jeff.
Is 10:30 the time or is it 11 o'clock? What do you want to do?
So we'll go through that.
Okay. well,
And so right now where we are is there's a motion that's been made to approve your application. The motion's been seconded. We have to now flesh out, if you will, the motion. So we've discussed in this hearing that the sign is for school use only. No advertising or outside messages will be delivered. We're going to limit the hours of operation. You're talking about 6:30 in the morning till 10 p.m. with it dimming at dark. So you want to maintain a ratio of the light emitted from the sign to the time of day. Now, 4 o'clock, you don't need a full bright sign. You don't need 100 nits, any of that at this time. You agreed to turn the sign off at 10 p.m. unless there is a school function deeming it necessary. It was requested that the small round circle on the top, Glenn, how big is that?
The top part, it's actually gonna be, it's actually a
I didn't see the
square.
dimension.
Here, it's actually gonna be a square. They're deciding on prolific if it's gonna be 1.5 by 1.5 or 2 feet by 2
This
feet.
is what we're talking about.
Yes, but it's actually
It's square, not round.
it's a square right now. Because it's easier to construct.
Okay, that's fine.
So it's roughly, at the most, will be 2 feet by 2 feet.
You guys, you want to see this? Steve, do you need to see that for any reason? Okay.
That's how they got here. I saw it.
Yeah, but they had a round, now they just square.
Julie knows.
That will be lit all the time. I understand.
Well, I think it should be, we can dim it at night, but I think it'd be great for the location of the high school.
Questions now, I'm not trying to force you in any direction.
Yes,
This
yes,
is for clarification for the clerk who will prepare the motion, which will become the law under which you will operate.
correct. Yes, please.
So we're being painful about this. If there are any problems from the neighborhood or anyone else complaining about the sign or its operation, they will be handled at the Oneonta Central School District Superintendent's Office,
Yes, sir.
whomever that individual may be. So Tim, now. Been here long enough, there's been a few others, and
All right.
maybe there'll be some more in the future, I don't know.
I don't want to say.
He seems like a young fellow.
I'll say something.
May be here for a while. Have I covered all the points that we've discussed?
Yeah.
Are there any that we need to add? No. Nothing. For informational purposes, tonight we had 5 people speak in opposition, 4 people speak in favor, and the 13,000 odd residents didn't show up.
John has a hand up.
Yes, sir.
Did you, do you need to go through the secret process for this?
We haven't started that yet.
Okay, just check.
There's no sense doing the secret process if we haven't in fact had a motion to allow this to occur.
Okay.
So right now, we've had a motion. The motion's been seconded. We're now trying to make sure that all the terms of the motion are correct and the city clerk has all of those. Then we'll go through the administration process. Maybe make some comment about the seeker. What is your interest?
Just process. No stake.
I'm sorry.
Just a process question.
I mean, if you have expertise in that, please help us.
So typically, if I can add on, I mean, we're all here from the planning commission. Typically, before any action or motion is made, the secret process has to be complied with.
Yeah.
It's state law, it's common procedure across every jurisdiction in the state pretty much. And so essentially, this is not going to have a substantial environmental impact, obviously, but just to avoid the possibility of lawsuits. That's our only interest. So
What
it's
I'm
just a
looking for
process.
now is my secret checklist, Danny. Let's see. You have,
So this would be an educational.
right, which is exempt.
It's a type 2 action, so there's
It's
no
not
impact.
two action.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of procedure.
Yeah, let's just add that to the motion. We'll declare this a type 2 action and we'll move forward. Are there any more questions, comments from the board? None? Everyone call the roll, please. This is a motion to approve. Containing the secret, including the itemized items.
Chairman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Serena.
Aye.
Commissioner Beck,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin. Aye.
Motion approved. Thank you, code office. And good to the-
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
That's a time to what how to clear a road.
Sort of carry them there.
All right, the second item we're dealing with tonight is 194. Who is here representing that property?
Me.
Would you like to tell the board what you would like to do?
I'm a home health aide and,
One second, there's too much noise in the hall.
okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a home health aide and I own the house on Ivy Court. And for the last 3 years, I had parked on my front lawn, had no clue that it was illegal to do so. And I need parking on my front lawn, so I don't have to wake people up at like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning when I have to leave if a client calls me and there's an emergency.
Okay.
I honestly didn't know it was illegal not to park on my own property. I've never owned a house. I was told by doctors that I would never own a house because it was a manic thing. So, yeah. I worked very hard to get my house and all I want to do is park on my front lawn. I'll make it look pretty. I mean, I can put a driveway, I can put stone or anything like that. I just need the extra parking.
Was there any questions? The applicant?
Is it a rental?
No, it's mine.
It's your own.
Yep. I worked 3 jobs for 3 years with no sleep to do this.
How many vehicles are in your household?
On a daily basis, 5. Mhm. Yes, it's me, my sister, my son Christopher, my son Anthony, and my nephew. And then mine, so 6. My bad.
And to wake up people that early in the morning so I can get out, it's not fair to them. And if I can't get out on time and one of my clients has a heart attack and I'm supposed to be there, how am I supposed to do that?
Did you make provisions for others so that you can leave your space? I'm just curious, like, how do you organize your cars and how do they all work and?
We all work different
Wake
times.
everybody up and
Yeah, I'm a home health aide. My nephew works at at Job Corps. He works at night. Christopher and his girlfriend, they work during the evening. My sister's a dental technician at Fox Care, so we all leave at different times. And I'm the one who's in and out most of the time. That's why I parked on the front lawn. Nobody ever said nothing. And then one day they took a picture of my sister's car that was parked on the other side of my house. And they said we couldn't do that. And I went to court twice and everything.
Is that it was?
yes, for now, yeah.
Dave? Any questions? Peter? No questions? No. Is there anyone here to speak to this application for or against?
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Katie LaFarge. I live on Second Street. I represent the fourth ward on the city council. I understand how much of a pain in the butt it is to shuffle cars. I've done it on the, I'm sure a lot of people have. I imagine that only gets worse when you have 6 cars. I think, unfortunately, I have to speak out against this because we live in a neighborhood, as I'm sure you know, that is mostly rental, where there are a lot of houses that have a ton of occupants with a ton of cars. And I think that it just sets a really bad precedent for other houses in the neighborhood to begin to do this.
But there's no parking.
There's no parking on Ivy Court, but there's parking on Center and there's parking on Spruce. So it's not totally convenient, but I mean, I think the other thing that swayed my decision was that you guys have a pretty long driveway. It's longer than mine. And because a variance would stay with the property, the problem isn't really that the property doesn't have parking. It's that it doesn't have enough parking for what you need right now, which I understand, but I think that because the variance would go with the property, I don't think that it's appropriate.
I'm not selling my house if that's what you're thinking. I'm gonna die in my house. Like, you don't understand. I have been beaten, I have been raped and everything else. I shouldn't own this house. I shouldn't even be alive. So just to have some parking there would make my life a lot easier. So that's why I'm here. That's why I spent the money. I didn't even go get food because I spent the money to come here just so it would be changed. That's all I'm asking for. Like, have you ever taken care of an elderly person? Have you ever had them die in your arms?
My mother died in my arms, actually.
Well, that's what I do.
But we don't have to go back and
Let's
forth. I'm
focus
sorry,
on-
yeah, I spoke on.
You speak to
I spoke on
me,
these.
she speaks to me, you guys don't speak to each other, okay?
I apologize.
Don't apologize, I'm just telling you how the rules are here. I mean, this is a picture representing your house, do you recognize it?
No.
We'll pass it around so you can see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those are our vehicles.
Right, would you find that acceptable? You were the neighbor.
No, but if I changed it and I fixed it to where it was
The
nice.
problem you have is you're trying to use your front yard for parking, which is not allowed by our zoning code. That's why you're here. This board has been very reluctant, if ever, to approve front yard parking. It affects the total character of the neighborhood. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this application either for or against? No one in the audience. All right, so we'll close the public session right now. And Peter, do you have any questions? No, I don't. Jeff? No. Yeah. No. Melissa?
No.
Good. is there anyone on the board willing to make a motion to approve or deny the application?
Make a motion to deny.
All right, so there's a motion currently on the table to deny the application. Is there any further questions or comments from the board? Mr. Yurley, do you have anything to say? All right. No comments. Please call the roll. This is a motion to deny the application.
Chairman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Tomato.
Aye.
Commissioner Beck.
Aye.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Reese.
Aye.
Commissioner Montano. Aye.
The motion has been denied. It's hard to keep everyone happy. All right, the next item is 54 East Street. Who's here representing that application, that property?
We are. My name is Jenny Kane. This is my husband, David Kane. And we live at 252 Lower Reservoir Road in Oneonta. And we are asking to be able to use 54 East Street as a short-term rental. And a little backstory on the house. We purchased it in 2015. It was a foreclosed property that was in need of a lot of work. It sort of started our project, and now we have 7 properties in the city that were all foreclosures and a couple in the town that were all, they were all foreclosures with the exception of one. They're mostly all professional rentals. This is the one house that we maintained as a student rental, and it's been a student rental for, I'm not sure how long, but a very long time, since the neighbors were students here. And we would like to be able to increase the income on that property to be able to continue to invest in other properties around the city. And we have another short-term rental on Academy Street that we've been very successful with, and we have no intent at all to turn any other properties into short-term rentals or student rentals.
And we're not necessarily opposed to student rentals or short-term rentals. If we don't have a penny. Steve, is this property up to date with all of its certifications? It is. Have you had any issues or problems with the owners? I do not. Great, thank you for that. Melissa, questions?
Property sits on the corner, correct?
Yes.
Right, so how many parking spaces do you have?
It has 5 parking spots.
All in back.
There's 5 parking spots in the back.
I just want to make sure that that's on.
Yeah, it's plenty of parking. It's 5 bedrooms and 5 parking spots.
Dave?
Wired to here, what is this contrary to? Is it not zoned?
We currently, Steve is working on this with the council, we currently do not allow short-term rentals in that zone. So they're asking to do short-term rentals in that zone, which we have approved on a case-by-case basis. That's why they're here. So the house is up to code right now, fully inspected and passed right now. I don't know if there's any, was there any additional requirements on them if they go into the short-term rental business at that location?
So the short-term rental permit requires the CSC. It also requires other, like emergency contact information. There's a short-term rental permit. It's issued once you complete the CSC process. Once you provide, evidence, you have homeowners insurance that covers that type of use.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's, they
Nothing they should not be able to meet.
Well, they already have short-term rentals, so they already know the process.
Okay.
I'll just point out too, that being very local, we're very involved in these properties and we spend a lot of time personally involved with the tenants, with the maintenance of the properties and such. So this is not, we're very answerable to any concerns that may come along. And I also might point out that we have very good relationships with the neighbors and have no complaints whatsoever with the students who've been there.
by upgrading the property and making it a really highly desirable student rental. Again, not changing the use, but just keeping it as was, but making it a very high quality one. We've been able to attract very good tenants, and the neighbors, have very positive comments about that. And we would do essentially the same thing with the summer rentals.
I have a question. Time for me to ask questions.
Yes, Peter.
So this is a.
Always time for you to ask questions.
Always. A lot of people don't agree with you. Especially relatives. So this is not a permitted use in this location, which means that this is a request for a use variance. So one of the primary criteria for use variance is that you show that you have a financial hardship that's unique to this property, that every other student rental in the neighborhood or in the center city wouldn't be entitled to the same variance. So what is unique about this property?
I mean, arguably probably put more money into it than a lot of student rentals. I mean, it's nice. It has, it's nicely finished. It has a floor plan that's sort of a current looking floor plan. Everything is, fresh and clean in it.
I don't think that's qualifies as the kind of unique financial hardship that's required for a use variance. That if that was a basis for approval, then anybody else that fixed up their student rental so it looked nice would then be entitled to the same thing, to a use variance to have short-term rentals. So I really think we should not be approving short-term rentals until the city comes up with their new law. And then we should do it in accordance with the new law. We've turned down most of them in the past 2-3 years, I think. I think prior to that, the board went through a spate of approving some without paying attention to the use variance criteria.
From looking at the minutes as I did, it seems that sometimes it doesn't seem that there's any real significant, there's not a standard criteria for when they're approved. And I don't really understand why we're here instead of in planning, looking for a special use permit, but I also think that there has to be a consistent standard, and apparently one was approved because somebody had a relative that may or may not be living there or something. I'm not, the minutes are unclear as to what the criteria were for denying that.
Just for clarification, the city of Oneonta zoning code does not have a special use permit requirement attached to short-term rentals. It could, but it does not.
Yeah, I mean, I know it doesn't.
Right.
But it just sort of.
I just clarified for the board,
Yeah.
the reason this is in front of the zoning board is because in R2s, we prohibit short-term rental use. So that is why this is.
There's, Mr. Chair, there's statewide, New York State town law establishes the criteria for issuing use variances such as Commissioner Friedman mentioned already. There are 4, and so they're consistent across the state. So in addition to financial hardship, there's also the question of whether or not there's going to be a substantial impact on the neighborhood, and whether, and then I think there's whether it could be achieved through some other means. And then the fourth one is whether or not the hardship was self-created. So there's 4, and it's state law.
And you have to meet all 4.
Correct. If you don't meet one, it gets denied.
Well, the nice thing about that, Mr. Lappin, is it's in the total purview of this board, whether they met or not.
Correct.
Okay, we just focus on that. Now, the city has not dealt with this properly. We have sent letters to the city from this board numerous times that they need to deal with this. People should have a reasonable right to use their property. We found historically that when they have short-term rentals, which are typically higher end rentals and deeper demand, better accommodations, that the property is in fact improved. frequently dramatically improved over what we would typically see in a student rental. I don't know if that's been your observation or not. So we continue to encourage the city to deal with the short-term rental problem. In the meantime, we have made exceptions as this board sees fit in the last, 17, 18 years. So they're subjective in many ways. Those four criteria that you mentioned. In this particular property, I take some input because, you guys deal with this at planning. Are you familiar with the property at 50 East Street? What surrounds it?
Other residential properties and student rentals, it's sort of an R2 zone, so.
Most of them are rentals.
The neighbor is directly behind it on Cedar. It's owner occupied, and across the street directly, the house that burned is also owner occupied, but other than that, it's rentals. And then Steve's not too far, yeah, Steve's not far away.
Steve lives there, yeah, I drive by there every day.
Steve.
That's, yeah.
Most of the houses on your block are owner occupied, right?
No, so my block is interesting, it's about half and half, it's 50-50. So me and Al Kleinman and my neighbor, and then the corner house. But then we have 2 vacant houses, we have a 4-unit rental property, we have Rob Martella across the street from me. So, and then Al Kleinman's rental on the other side of me, so it's literally like 50-50. Not a lot of student rental, but we have a lot of.
I think it's unfortunate that we keep digging this hole deeper and deeper of establishing a precedent by making a determination to allow something that we have no authority to allow. The zoning board does not have the authority to approve a use variance that doesn't meet the 4 criteria. If it does, it's doing something that's challengeable in court easily. And it also, I think, subjects to the zoning board to not being taken seriously in decisions that it makes.
Thanks for your comment. Appreciate it.
No, you don't. That's sarcastic. And we should be able to be sarcastic.
It's the truth. In 18 years, we've been sued once.
Yeah.
It was over feral cats.
Yeah, but that's because people really can't afford to come out and pay a lawyer to do those kind of things. There's plenty that would sue.
I just want to clarify, I wasn't speaking in favor of the applicant based on the fact that there are rentals. I was just clarifying the number of rentals that are in close proximity.
And what would it be like if all of them became short-term rentals? How would that?
That's what I'm trying, I'm not trying to say that I'm supporting the applicant. I was just clarifying the number of rentals.
And tonight, we're fortunate we have 3 council members here who could start to take this situation seriously and follow through with the suggestions that the code officer has presented.
So to clarify that, we did update the short-term rental ordinance to allow some short-term rental in R2s as long as it's owner occupied. So currently, the only way that you cannot engage in short-term rental is if you're not occupying the property as a full-time resident. So I could do 3 months of short-term rental out of my house because I occupy it full-time, which is mirroring many other, San Francisco has an ordinance like that. Boston has an ordinance like that. It mirrors a lot of other metropolitan ordinances.
So then has the common council, I'm fine with that ordinance. I think it's a good ordinance. It has to be owner occupied. But my question is, because I don't watch what goes on with the council, has the development of any new ordinances towards short-term rentals pretty much stopped because they decided that we are now okay with what we have in the way of an ordinance?
So the ordinance was passed was an attempt to allow owner occupants to still do short-term rental. Because it used to be you could do it like 14 days every 6 months or something weird. So what this did was it clarified who can do short-term rental, what zones they can do it in, what stipulations are attached to it. The only way to make short-term rental more accessible would be to just do a special use permit process. Where anyone could apply for a special use permit and it would be reviewed by the planning commission on a case-by-case basis and see if that meets.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we've been suggesting this for, I think, 5 years now,
Right.
over 5 years. maybe.
Right, so when it was reviewed by the legislative committee, the ordinance that was drafted was the compromise position.
What's that? You've never heard it?
It was the compromise position between two ordinances.
I mean, I don't know if we can push a lot of that stuff through here, but, when we redid the code, I don't know how long ago it was, we certainly did make some mistakes. And I think, short-term rentals is something that's come up more often, and I think dealing with it in planning makes more sense. I think you agree with it. Through the special use permit or a special permit issued for short-term rentals through the planning commission, we can look at the neighborhood and see what impact it may or may not have. We haven't warned them.
Well, so just to clarify how this all came about. The position the city took with the ordinance was a compromise position because there was concern by individuals on the legislative committee and within the council that allowing special use permits would just open the floodgates to short-term rental. So this was a way to still control short-term rentals in the R2 and restrict their issuance, I guess.
When we wrote the zoning code in 2011, we dealt with short-term rentals. And we dealt with them by allowing them along the entire frontage of Chestnut Street, yes, of Main Street and of River Street. Yes. I think we have enough areas where we've permitted it.
Okay. Jeff, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No.
Yeah?
No, I have no question.
Anyone here in the audience to speak for or against this application? Anything else from any board members?
Question with regards, I understand I have a student rental of 10 months every year, and then it would be short-term rental,
Yes,
That's my understanding.
right?
yeah, I mean, the lease, the house is vacant in the summer because they are 10-month leases. It seems most students prefer 10-month leases. So the house is vacant for those 2 months a year anyway. And I mean, the money that we make on these gets reinvested, and it seems to me that we might as well get, what we can out of that house that we have made a substantial investment in, that we will never get back selling it as a single family. And be able to use it to the maximum capacity, especially because I find that the neighbors are gonna be, I'm sure the Cowdens are fine with it. They're happy with the way we take care of things. Everything else is apartments around that's gonna be directly affected by it. And, based on our other short-term rentals, the people are not there very much. And so, they're there, they're at the ballpark all day. And they come home and go to bed.
Yeah, that's not your real problem. Everybody will, admit that you do a nice job, you take care of your house. The way you're situated now, you are asking for a use variance, and you haven't given us a whole lot to go over. You heard Mr. Lappin and Mr. Friedman talk about the four corners of a use variance. You have to consider that. One of them, is income. Why do you need it? What is your hardship?
I mean, I guess just.
You don't have one.
Yeah.
This is just something you want.
But you granted one the one on Elm Street isn't owner occupied, and you granted a short-term.
We do, but this board does not set a precedent. Each property is individual. We do not have properties here that we're saying. Every circumstance is different. Everything that's brought before us is different. We have people come talking about signs. This is the first time when somebody's talking about a sign for an educational institution on Easter. Somebody will come and talk about a sign next week. We don't know what they are. I mean, you're square, if you look at the things the zoning board has done in the past, the properties are on the border of zones where we allow it and zones where we don't. And the zone lines that are drawn are somewhat arbitrary. I mean, I can tell you that because I was involved with a group of people that drew the lines. I don't know how we did it. And it can't be perfect. Which is why the state insists that if you're going to have a zoning law in your community, you must have a zoning board. Because it's never perfect. Someone has to be able to make exceptions. And they do give guidelines. I think your better course of action, and I'm saying this to the council members that are here, is for the city to deal with short-term rentals.
Right, but
And not deal with them from a position of fear, but to deal with it.
I think you're mischaracterizing the position of council. It's not a position of fear. It's a position of reasonable protection of residential neighborhoods. It's not fear.
Well, if you were listening to what they said, they took a compromised position. They didn't go one way or the other, they took something in the middle, said if you live in the house, you can rent it. That to me is not much of a distinction.
There needs to be one added that says we have a student rental, we want to rent it for the next 2 months.
Right.
We should be allowed to do that.
I think the concern was that people would purchase homes, rent them to students 10 months a year, rent them out over the summer. And that it would artificially impact the current housing stuff. Negatively.
Yeah.
But we can continue to purchase homes for student rentals.
Right.
What's the difference? It doesn't, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
You're
that's
still
the-
renting it out, so that's right.
What did you just?
I'm just saying, if you're purchasing a home to rent it for a rental property and you have 2 months that are vacant, you should be able to rent those 2 months to whoever you choose to, as long as you're obliging by local laws and make sure that tenants that you're renting it out to, you know, are doing the right thing.
I think one of the problems with student rentals that are anticipated to be rentals as short-term rentals is that they drive the price up, the sale price up of single-family rentals so that families cannot afford to buy them. And we have a real problem in this community of working families not being able to get housing in the city because they can't afford it.
And we have 11 properties around the city. One is a short-term rental because it's zoned for it, and 10 of them are professional rentals.
Single family.
Single family, one has three apartments that has 3 young couples in it. The rest of them are all single family working
No, I'm
professionals.
talking about the sale price of single-family houses.
But that would only be a
people, for people who want to buy their own house and not be a renter.
If I could just jump in really quick, I wanted to answer a point made by Commissioner Montanti. The difference between renting a property and then issuing a use variance to rent a property is that the use variance runs with the property, runs with the land, they say, so then it essentially obviates any future attempt to regulate or change the policy initiative. So that's kind of why Chairman May's point in having it go through planning or some other corrective measure allows for more effective control of short-term rentals in general.
There you go.
We've been saying that for years.
Right.
I'm in agreement.
I'm pretty sure our special use permits also run on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to like chime
To
in.
get the public officials to come to that conclusion.
Yeah,
This is a blunt instrument here, and we've used it a few times.
well, we,
And every time we use it, we send a letter to the council suggesting that they deal with it.
exactly, well, it
We're not in
sounds,
control of them, they do as they please.
it sounds like we can push hard on the housing commission together then.
Sure. I mean, that's what it is, and that might be the place for something to come out of,
Yeah, I mean-
something made,
Our mandate is to provide recommendations to the council, so I think
but that's certainly the one that should be made.
definitely.
So, I mean, that legislation's already been drafted. It's
Right.
simply just be,
Yeah,
So,
maybe
you
it's,
ready for a motion?
Can you share that?
We still have more.
Especially his permit removal
Well, let's
properties.
just see if that's anything
No,
to
Just
say.
a variance.
yeah,
Just for
the rents the land.
the variance.
I don't have that.
Decision.
Question.
That doesn't run like of itself. So it doesn't.
Yeah, but I would say a little more, push for more time. to get-
I'll go ahead and start the motion.
All right, so if there's no one else in the audience wants to say anything, Mr. Carson?
As Councilmember Carson, I thought that this issue was resolved. So to testify upon, and Councilmember LaBarge Shu is on the legislative committee, I thought when this came before us in 2020, this resolved the issue that was going before the ZBA. This is the first time I'm hearing about that there's an actual glitch, if that's what we're gonna call this, within the short-term rental. I thought we had solved that issue. Now, I would like a point of clarification from the code enforcement officer or you, Chair May. What is the definition of short-term rental?
Any rental that exceeds, that's less than 30 days.
So if the property owners on my left were to enter into an agreement more than 30 days with individuals, and those individuals didn't actually stay the full 30 days, are they against the law?
Probably, yes. I mean, it would literally be up to us to pursue in court. I mean, we could go that route, we could investigate, we could build a case against them if we wanted to.
I'm listening to Ford Montana saying the same thing that I was thinking with, this is a student rental that's rented out 10 months. The remaining 2 months could be rented out.
Correct.
It's not like you're taking a single family home and you're renting out to transits.
Right, so what you have to apply that logic to is every house that's located in an R2 zone, which the council was not prepared to pass.
I thought it was, okay, well, for me, this is a student rental, not a single family. We were looking for people that I heard come before the ZBA were single families that wanted an opportunity to bring in income. Folks that are senior citizens wanted an opportunity to bring some more
They
revenue
wanted
in.
that.
So that's what was presented before the council.
Right, and that's what was.
This is a student rental, and I'm trying to understand the justification why they have to come before ZBA and not a special use permit before planning for them to rent out the last 2 months out of a 12-month year.
Because the law that was presented to the council reflected the concern that elderly people, single-family homeowners that were coming to the zoning board for use variances didn't need to come here for use variance. And everyone wanted to ensure that those people could just apply for a permit. The concern by the other members of the legislative committee were that people that are just renting houses would then be able to also just continue to get short-term rental permits. So the goal was to help the people that they wanted to help and not encourage additional rental units to be turned into short-term rentals.
So we still got a lot to do.
Well, I think we only have one more thing.
The simplest thing to do would be to just, if you want to, you can remove short-term rental from your prohibited uses and just issue special use permits.
Right.
You just have to convince the council that that's what they want to do.
Right. That's what the council should do. It would then go to the planning commission, who has more latitude and leeway, and the decisions they make do not go in perpetuity. They
With
go
the
into
understanding
exchange
that
of law.
everyone could then apply for short-term rental.
But doesn't a special use permit stage the property
No.
No, it doesn't.
in this? 'cause
It has
doesn't-
a specific term. If you changed
But
ownership.
I'm on the planning board for the town, and when we issue special use permits for short-term rentals, which is how we do it, they do stay with the property.
Town law is different from city law.
Okay.
The zoning codes are,
But
the zoning
in
codes
the
are
city,
different.
the city has the authority to limit the time that a special use permit is issued for. We may have the same authority in the town, nobody uses it.
Yeah, if there's, for example, if you get approval and it doesn't, if you don't,
If
if you
there's a
don't,
problem, we'll have to come back.
Yeah, so typically, there's like a, we could decide if there's a term needed to reapply, or usually, for the issues of special use permit, we have to make sure that each short-term rental
It's
application
good for
meets the
the first year,
criteria.
and then as long as there's not any problems.
Correct, yeah, so it'd be like the same thing, I mean, and then the planning commission and the housing commission jointly can also.
So,
Second,
so you understand how the board is feeling right now. I mean, there are other answers that allow this to go on longer than we should have. This really is a legislature issue they need to deal with.
I
They need to
understand
send
that.
this to the planning commission, not the zoning board, because we changed zoning law and it stays with the property in perpetuity.
I understand and I agree with that, but there is no avenue to take it to planning.
Well, we have, as I said before, 3 of our council members in the room who've heard this.
They've all heard it. They've heard it for years. I've talked to Steve about this many times. This is the wrong avenue, but it is the only avenue. There is no other avenue.
I understand.
That's true about all prohibited uses.
Right. This is the only way to get an exemption to the law.
I mean, I
So,
guess
if this,
it's fairly simple. If Mr. Councilman Carson thinks this should go to the legislative committee again, we can always submit the other version of the ordinance that's already been written.
right,
And then the housing commission can support it with a resolution too.
Right.
As it is our
and then the
mandate.
planning commission can make a decision on a case-by-case basis, which is really how it should be.
Yeah.
And they can have a term of 3 years, like sororities, the frat houses, all the other special use permits that we issue.
Or if the neighbors complain too much, or if there's law
They hear
enforcement
it.
involvement, then they'll be denied and they'll
That
go
is
before a
correct.
plan.
That those reports are given to the planning commission and they have an opportunity to address them with the applicant. So I think we have spent enough time on it. There is a motion to deny. It's been seconded. Is there any further comment from the board members? So the motion is to deny the application. Call the roll, please.
Chair Ray,
Aye.
Vice Chair Tomato,
Aye.
Commissioner Rath,
Aye.
Commissioner Friedman,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
No.
Commissioner Montana. No.
So we're sorry we couldn't accommodate you, but your request has been denied. All right, the fourth item on the agenda is for code interpretation from the planning commission. And you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman May. Terry, do you need my address for the record now? Okay, all right. Just asking. So, during, I think it's what, September meeting? The planning commission issued a negative declaration under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act for the Hawk Hill Solar Project, about 60 acre or so solar array that's located on Strawberry Fields. It's a parcel owned by Hartwick College. We initiated several months prior to that a lengthy review period. Multiple public hearings on the project. We solicited written comments. We had multiple public presentations. After reviewing all of the documentation, including multiple comments from the neighborhood, we determined that the project is not likely to significantly affect the environment. However, when we issued our site plan review approval, we we noticed that the zoning law doesn't specifically address ground mounted solar arrays. However, there was a prior decision dated November 26, 2018, in which a use variance was granted to Corning to construct a similar ground mounted solar array that was intended to primarily serve Corning. In reviewing the relevant case law and additional documentation, the Planning Commission felt that the precedent set by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and Mr. Chairman, or Chairman May and I will disagree on this, has enough of a substantial overlap in which we felt comfortable determining that the solar array was an accessory use to Hartwick College. However, in reviewing the written record, we noticed that there was no official written decision on the Corning project outlining how the Zoning Board of Appeals approached the Corning project in particular, with the exception that, there was a brief statement made by the former clerk, what's her last name? Nancy Powell, stating that the variance was approved. There are two, I guess multiple cases in New York State courts that have been held over the last several decades that Zoning Board of Appeals do set precedent, and the precedent cannot be ignored. There is one exception that the courts have found, is that if the ZBA determines that there's a substantial difference between two projects, that they can deviate from their prior precedent, provided they do so in writing and have a clear description of why the two projects are different. The Planning Commission.
Hang on for a second.
Sure.
One thing I'm going to correct is we can't disagree with our prior precedent. We can disagree with our prior decision. you're claiming it's a precedent, it's a decision. And the factors that we're gonna talk about tonight are not even in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, so the multiple legal texts that I can send you, and the court cases refer to it specifically as precedent. I'd be happy to submit those if that helps.
No,
You know, the different, when we reviewed the documentation, you know, we found that the aspects of the project are substantially similar. We're focusing primarily on the use of land, not necessarily the specifics of the engineering and design related to the project, because the zoning code refers specifically to the use of the land. You know, Stephen can correct me if I'm wrong.
no, I just ask a few questions as we go along, if you don't mind.
That's why we're here.
The Corning project sits in what zone?
CI zone,
And the solar generator for Corning that they applied for through their companies sits in what zone?
U zone,
No, I
university.
said Corning,
Oh, Corning, Corning's in the commercial.
it's in the CI zone.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
And the properties on the north side of River Street behind Corning sit in what zone?
CI zone.
CI zone. All right, so there is nothing there but commercial industrial zone, which allows solar generators or some other kind of electrical generator.
Does not explicitly
No.
allow solar.
That's,
Excuse me?
that's.
It does not explicitly allow
That's
solar.
why Stephen had referred it to the ZBA in the first place. I mean,
That are
so,
multi-use tables. Have you done that?
There's no mention of solar in the entire
No,
code.
there's no mention of solar.
Right.
It's commercial and industrial uses, which includes virtually everything. From a chop shop to a rendering plant to a, as a matter of fact, to a power generating station that we almost had down in the River Street.
But it did not allow this, that's why I went to ZBA.
So,
Otherwise, it
It
would be
doesn't specifically say
I
solar.
mean, the
We
thing,
allow solar as an accessory use here in every zone.
so,
Every zone, right,
We do not allow a generator in every zone.
okay.
An accessory use is one that is attached to the primary use for the exclusive use of the primary use. It is not one that the primary use sponsors and we sell the power to the grid and then we get a kickback to buy the power. That's a generator.
could you just say that again, because I think I don't agree with you. Did you say, I'll ask you, did you say that an accessory use must exclusively serve the primary use?
That is correct.
That's not true.
Okay.
so, I mean, it's mostly substantial, you get subsidiary to the primary use, and the fact that the Corning solar array is that it does also it's tied into the grid as well. So then I think like the issue about the question about what zone it is not, in my opinion, it's not inherently germane to the discussion. Because the only logical conclusion that could be derived from that is you're referring to the intensity of use. And so a simple review of the allowable uses as compared to the setbacks, which the planning commission did do. You could have a football stadium erected 25 feet from someone's back, rear property line. The solar array
Where are you talking about? Danny?
in the university zone,
Oh,
the setbacks, they allow educational facilities. You could build, the Syracuse University basketball arena right next to somebody's house if you wanted to. It's allowed.
Yes, sir.
And so the solar array in our lengthy back and forward with the applicant, they, on average, I think they exceed the minimum setback requirement by orders of magnitude. Some cases it's like 8 times as much. Some cases it's like 5 or 6 times as much. They've provided substantial screening and other environmental mitigation measures despite not being required to. But that's kind of beside the point. And then when we reviewed the project proposed environmental impacts and compliance with the site plan review law, we found that they are substantial compliance. We didn't see any evidence to the contrary in the form of engineered reports or any sort of quantitative analysis refuting any of the material on record, which is what we needed to go on. The state law prohibits us from, acting on generalized community objections to the project. So we basically left no stone unturned with regard to the environmental.
So the list of things on the agenda that included this said that the planning commission wanted the zoning board to determine or make an interpretation as to whether solar farms or whatever are how they're permitted or where they're permitted.
Correct. Yeah, that's,
I think that was what was asked.
that's correct. We,
But I think I thought it was directly in terms of the Harvard College project.
yeah, we asked for it.
So if it was directly in terms of the Harvard College project, that's clearly an accessory use. And if that's the determination that you want from this board, whether it's an accessory use or a not permitted use or what, then is that what we're supposed to do?
Yes,
with
that's
this?
what we're.
That's
Let's
correct.
see if we can add some clarity to this.
That's
Karen,
correct.
would you please read the city's definition of accessory use?
I can read it.
She's got it up.
A use clearly incidental and subordinate to the principal use, whether located in a principal or accessory building and located on the same lot therewith. In no case shall such accessory use dominate in area, extent, or purpose the principal lawful use or building.
So I have several comments on that definition that
Yes.
speak to why this is an accessory use. I don't want to go through it if that's not what we're doing here. Is that what we're doing here?
That's my understanding.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, so this might take me a minute or two. First of all, as with the school sign, educational uses possess a degree of immunity from zoning law, not unlike, but to a lesser degree than religious uses. The proposed use is an accessory use as defined in our zoning code because, one, it is supportive of the cost of running the college, and so it contributes to the usefulness of the college in carrying out its educational function. Two, it will be useful to the college in that it provides the college with an independent source of energy. And three, it makes the college attractive as an educational institution in that the facility will be a public statement of its forward thinking, and it will be used as a basis for learning about environmental issues. The proposed use is subordinate, that's from the definition, subordinate, as per the Oneana definition, to the principal use of the land because A, it is financially subordinate. The amount of money that it's generating is substantially less than all of the rest of the money or value that the college generates from all of the other uses, like student tuition and music camps and wedding venues and sports camps. And two, it's subordinate in size. The amount of land to be used for the solar project is a very small part of the total amount of land owned by the college and also of the total amount of land used by the college. The other word that's in here is incidental. An accessory use is incidental and subordinate. The zoning code doesn't define the word incidental. Commonly found definitions of incidental include not the primary use, but one subordinate in its significance. Our code does not apply the term customarily to the term subordinate and incidental, as some zoning codes do. And that's and we would have trouble, I think, a little bit of trouble with that issue of customarily because these are new uses. So nothing's customary if it's a whole new way of doing things. Lacking that word of customary, Harvard College has a right to have applied to it a broader definition of the word incidental and thus to do things that are subordinate but that are not common on existing campuses. So I don't see how we can not say that this is an accessory use.
Well, it's, to me, it's pretty simple. An accessory use is one that supports the structure of the building, the college directly, not one that goes into an intermediate transformer sold into the public grid and then they buy power back. That's not much different than buying power off the grid now. That's a solar generator.
I
That's
think you're
not an
making an
accessory.
artificial distinction.
I don't think it's artificial at all. They're quite different.
I mean, if they wanted to set up a restaurant that serves the students and the public, that could also be an accessory use. It's generating revenue for the college. But they would also be directly serving the public.
We're
I
not
mean-
talking about directly serving the public.
Well, it doesn't
There's
only
something in
have
the
to,
restaurant that they're holding out for public use, saying that we have the School of Hotel and Restaurant Management. And as part of my school mission, we're running that hotel. Many colleges do that.
So.
Clearly accessory use, clearly already permitted in the U zone. They could do it tomorrow. They could build a dormitory there. They could build anything that had an educational purpose without coming here. They're asking for a generator. This has to be a solar generator. What if it was a natural gas fired generator
be the same,
or coal?
would be the same.
The same
You're gonna make the same
regulation.
argument that's an accessory use.
It depends. They could build a wastewater treatment plant on the same site. The same logic would apply and to be subject to the same set of environmental regulations. I mean, it's not, I don't see how it's really germane to engage in hypotheticals. I think the key thing that we're focusing on is if you have a roof mounted solar array and there's per summer, you're likely going to be selling, it serves as a power generator, and the meter spins backwards because they're feeding energy back into the grid. So, I mean, and, in reviewing the application package, it's pretty clear that the applicant intends to utilize the New York State Community Solar Program, and they have designated Hardwick as their primary anchor tenant. So to the greatest extent possible, the energy generated by the project will be used to offset Hardwick College's energy consumption, and it serves as the anchor tenant. The excess power will be sold back into the grid for customers to purchase through power purchase agreements. So it's the same as having a big version of a solar array on your house,
Well,
essentially.
it really isn't, Danny. I have one on my house. And I don't get a penny back. New York State is net meter. Whatever that excess power that I might generate goes into the grid, it just leaves. My bill can never go below zero.
Well, what is Hartwood College's arrangement with this solar company?
It's just like Corning, and
Corning used a company called Green Spark to construct a solar field. Hardwick is using a company called Hawkhead or Nexamp
Nexamp.
Solar. And that's.
Nexamp, isn't it? Something like that.
And is Hartwood guaranteed some kind of return? And what's that return for allowing them to be there?
they lease the land,
Right.
offer a payment on a kind of agreement that between the college and the solar developer.
They
Um,
utilize 40% of the energy from the solar panels. I think that's the maximum they're allowed to utilize, similar to the Green Spark project at Corning.
So they have a contract where they get 40% of the electricity generated.
That's.
I would not say that's an accessory use.
And then-
because it's 60%.
No, because it's not tied to their building. It's tied to the public grid.
that's
They're
the-
buying from the public grid.
And then that's exactly the same as Corning. So,
Corning's in a CI zone, Danny, and their farm is in a CI zone, Danny, and the neighborhoods are in the CI zone, and they're not complaining.
Well, why is the CI, why
so
is,
in New York State, again, it's the state law and about 90 years of court precedent prevent generalized neighborhood objections from overturning a decision unless there's quantitative analysis to support or specific studies done to refute the ample studies already provided by the applicant and the analysis done by the planning commission. The other side, again, is what I'll tell you is that the university zone, and the only distinction that you make, again, which we've been over already, is the CI zone and the university zone. The only distinction could be related to the intensity of use. And as I've said before, the intensity of use for the Hawk Hill Solar Project has been determined extensively to be much less than what would normally be allowed there, and to be temporary, whereas the construction of a basketball arena could be permanent or have a term of 50 years or so. The applicant has signed a decommissioning agreement with the city that has been reviewed, and they've been required to provide financial surety that the site will be restored to its former condition, or actually an improved version of its former condition. With regard to concerns about environmental impact, they've been addressed. The applicant has actually created a situation with regard to their stormwater controls that will reduce the actual runoff coming off the site when that was not required by law. By law, it's a net difference of 0. The stormwater features have been designed to accommodate the runoff from a 100-year rain event. And again, that's not required by law. So they've gone above and beyond, in my opinion. And we've again, exercised a very careful consideration of all the evidence in front of us.
And the neighbors have input to that, and how do they feel about it?
They provided their input extensively. The neighbors were opposed to the project. We heard their concerns. We revised the application multiple times to accommodate those concerns. And the additional concerns were not substantiated with engineering studies or other professional analyses done in a way that demonstrated that the mitigation measures were either inadequate or that they missed some substantial component. We offered multiple opportunities to provide said comment, even though that was also not required by law. We had a very open process. We worked collaboratively. I think this is the first project where we actually had negative declarations issued, provided online. It's probably the first application since I've been on the planning commission where we had multiple, public comment periods before we even made a decision, when that's only required for an environmental impact statement.
So then the neighbors support this, you have all this.
It's not a matter of whether they support or deny. It's a matter.
This is an interpretation of the law.
It's a matter, we follow every.
Input from neighbors on the interpretation of the law is not really appropriate.
Well, they count here.
What?
They count here, Peter.
Well, they count for variances, but on interpretation of the law, it's a legal issue. The question is it allowed or isn't it allowed? The question is not, do we like it or don't we like it?
It's pretty simple to me. If you read the accessory use, even the definitions you read.
Yeah, that's the only one.
You're saying that a power generation station can go there across the street from the neighbors without regard to how the neighbors feel, because it's helping Hartwick College. That's what you're saying.
The argument that
That's
it's.
right. Under the standards of the site plan.
With the argument that the neighbors, we didn't consider how the neighbors feel is easily contravened by the record in writing. So, if you haven't already, I encourage you to review that. And the other side is that, again, when we're looking at environmental impact or community opposition, New York state law in terms of environmental impacts requires us to follow it literally. And they have clear standards about what constitutes a significant impact and what doesn't. The standards are not effectuated in the law specifically, but you have about 7 or 8 decades of court rulings which kind of provide us guardrails in which we considered. We did review the case law. We've sent the decision to the city attorney. Again, we required substantial concessions from the applicant. And with regard to collecting neighborhood input, we had multiple sessions. I actually went out on a walkthrough of the property site. I've been up there multiple times. I went up there at the request of Councilmember Carson. It was on a weekend day. We walked around. Again, we've really made every effort to make the neighbors feel heard and address their concerns. We're confident that we have a clear basis for addressing their concerns. They may not be happy with the decision, and as we've seen, the courts respect that level of analysis, as we've seen with the lofts on deeds. That project was, the neighbors were opposed to it and angry about it. They filed an Article 78. The decision was denied by the courts. They appealed the decision and the appeal was denied on all counts, correct? So that, again, as I'll point out, just because the community is opposed to a project, unless they can provide substantial, quantitative, verifiable analysis documenting otherwise, decisions stand. And we really made every effort to accommodate their concerns, and I took them very seriously. And I think I'm confident that the decisions that the commission prepared effectuate that.
Look, there's no question that you came in with more engineers and more money than the neighborhood has.
Well,
That's
actually,
clear.
the planning
And your
commission.
response, Danny, your response is they didn't provide us with the equal and opposite engineering. I understand that, and I hear it clearly. I'm an old man. I've been doing this a long time. And we try to take the neighbors' opinions and their homes and the largest assets they have into account when we're dealing with things all the time.
Even if we were in complete agreement with the neighbors, I'm not sure we would have had any grounds to deny it. I'm just not sure what grounds I would have been comfortable denying the project.
So just for clarification, I think where Danny was going with that is the loss on deeds determination specifically stated by the court that without counter engineering or without counter professional input on traffic, parking, the city couldn't legally deny the application. Right.
And so the other side is that, you know, the courts have also held that, you know, you don't have to be an environmental expert to make these decisions. So you can offer, but in this case, the planning commission had quite a bit of expertise to review the project. If there was an issue where I didn't feel, or like the planning commission had the ability, or if there was agreement, we would have been able to hire our own engineer to review the proposed project. But the analysis provided by the applicant, and we, after careful review, we arrived at this decision. It's not like a snap decision that we just kind of thought about. It's not, we followed all proper guidelines with regard to the review. We're confident that if it were challenged, it would stand. The only thing that we're here today is ask for an interpretation of the code. And I think that really focusing on community opposition creates a slippery slope. If, you know, if
Danny, we're not focusing on community opposition. I ask questions. We're focusing on whether a power generating station is an accessory use. That's what you asked.
And the
The
reason.
other things were just a conversation to say, hey, how much attention did you pay to the neighbor?
And
We try to do
we
that.
asked, I mean, we asked that question because we wanted to verify a decision that your board made.
Our board made a decision with a different fact pattern and a different location and different conditions. And I can repeat that to you 100 times. The CI zone is more liberal than the university or our R zones. We would not consider a power generating station in the middle of an R zone. It would not come here. We would not consider it. But you're asking us to consider an accessory use, a power generating station on Hartwick College property, that they are renting the property to the power generating company and getting a special deal to buy power back. That's what you laid out here. That does not qualify, in my humble opinion, an accessory use.
Can I ask this question of Stephen?
Sure, absolutely.
If there was an R zone, you know, parcel that had significant space to put a couple of solar panels, free-mounted solar panels, and sell that into the grid, we would review that presumably as a accessory use currently. Or no, am I incorrect in that?
Yeah, you would, and the, yeah, I mean, so basically that would be an accessory use. We don't have a solar ordinance in the city, so there's no specific, they would have to be classified as an accessory use. So you review it just like you would a garage, because there is no ordinance stating that a roof mounted or ground mounted panel system has certain design standards placed. It would follow the same setbacks as a garage or any other accessory structure.
So we probably should have done that, but you know, in hindsight, it's like 2020. When we did this, we didn't think about that.
I have a question for Stephen. So can you explain the genesis of how this arrived at planning?
So this project was brought to me as an application by Harvard College and Nexan. Based on the project's application, it was offered to planning or to zoning. The reason it was presented to zoning was, the question was whether it was similar to the Corning application. The Corning application had been approved, it had been determined it was an accessory use. That's what we exist in the records of the code office. We had a discussion, it's an accessory use. There are no minutes from the meeting to confirm anything about that meeting other than what Nancy Powell wrote down. From that point, it then went to the planning commission as a site plan review. The planning commission reviewed it as an accessory use, similar to the determination on Corning application. After the environmental impact, or after the environmental review, it was then determined by the planning commission that the zoning board should provide an opinion as to whether the accessory use determination made in Corning was equally applicable to the Hardwick application. The Corning application was on 2 parcels. It's a ground mounted solar system installed by a company called Green Spark. Corning in their application said that they would use a bulk of the energy from the solar application, but it's essentially to say it's a 40-60 split as far as we understand it, similar to the Hardwick application. So that's how we find ourselves sitting here.
Yeah, solar law would be great. I think we can agree on that. Solar regulation would be great to have. Unfortunately, we don't have that.
So there's a lot of updating we could do.
Yes.
I mean, you got 2 of the guys sitting here that were responsible for the code we're fighting over now. And it just recognizes we didn't do it as well as we could have.
So for clarification as well, the applicant the applicant has agreed to a more restrictive site plan than what NYSERDA's model solar ordinance would permit. I mean, so they're already, even if we were to adopt like a model solar ordinance, this particular application has already agreed to more restrictive terms than what a typical solar ordinance would require.
Substantially more restrictive.
So let's get, I think that certainly is not the argument. Where I'm having the problem is it an accessory use?
Well, let's get back to that issue. Because I think that's the only issue in front of us.
Yes, sir.
Harvard College is a college that serves the community like colleges do in terms of providing employment, providing education, providing all kinds of other accessory things on their campus. I feel pretty comfortable that if we did approve this as an accessory use in Harvard College decided to challenge that decision in a court, we would lose that decision. I've read a lot over the past couple of weeks about accessory uses at colleges, and you know, if they're getting a significant financial benefit, it's an accessory use.
Okay. Jeff, let's see what the rest of the board understands. Jeff, what do you think? You've heard the argument. Go and talk.
I see the differences between the two. Zoning, I'm not too concerned with. Accessory use makes sense to me. 60-40 split seems to be the norm for new technologies. And you 2 guys have talked about it not being included in the zoning. Well, back when you were doing it, how popular was solar farms?
It wasn't, we allowed, solar farms weren't the issue. What we dealt with was basically residential solar panels or businesses putting on solar panels like the Green Earth Store, or my house, or other places where people were putting them up. So rather than have them have to fight and, you know, have a lot that's not big enough, that didn't meet the lot size, so they ran for their area variances, they're going to want to do something. We thought it made sense to allow solar as an accessory use. That means that solar panel on that house served that house. On that house, it didn't serve the neighbor's house.
I don't think solar is mentioned in our code as an accessory use for anything, residential or otherwise. I think we just glossed over it completely. I think it was so not on the table at the time.
Danny, question, please.
Sure.
When you talk to the neighbors and they had some dissension on the solar farm, what accommodations were made to try to come to a balance?
Sure, so there are a number of them. We can start with the most obvious one, which was the stormwater runoff. The applicant, under state law, is required to ensure that no net increase in runoff comes off the project site. But to take the site condition into consideration, it's already a very wet site and there's already a lot of runoff coming off there. The neighbors have been clear in their statements about that issue. So in response, the applicant designed a stormwater control system that actually reduces the net amount of runoff coming off the site when they didn't have to. The other component is that they designed their stormwater features. So let's say there's, a 100-year storm, that the stormwater control features would hold or designed to accommodate that with these and ensure that the storm average runoff reduction would continue to be less than what's coming off the site now. The second accommodation that was made was with regard to the visual impact. The applicant did a visual impact analysis using computer software. They also offered to initially put a straight vegetative screen. After input from the community and the planning commission, it was found that that straight line of evergreen trees was not adequate. So they redesigned the screen to be a staggered pattern, which would further obscure the solar array. There was concern about the fence. In terms of, it was initially going to be one of those privacy fences or, the black screen. They created a farm fence, which is, you can see through it from one side of the field across the other. There was concern about the setbacks, and the solar arrays were moved to ensure that there was, a 100-foot setback at the low end, maybe 136-foot setback at the low end, and 245-foot setback at the high end. There was concern about the usage of the trails and enjoyment of the property, despite recognizing the fact that it's private property and Hartwick College could use it as they see fit. The college and Nexamp agreed to construct a brand new trail to ensure connectivity from Hartwick College to the Job Corps trail system, so that people could still pass through and enjoy the property. They agreed to have a decommissioning plan and be required to provide financial surety that the site would be restored to pre-construction conditions and monitored as such. They were willing to provide contact information for neighbors to report complaints if the stormwater controls or the erosion sediment control measures or the construction activity was done outside of the parameters of our approval. They had contact information, which they missed the first time, and we made them come back and provide that. Let's see, I think I got everything. There was
some city engineer had some issues with the
I
road
think
access.
there was issues with the inverters. So they moved the location of the inverters to ensure that they were far enough away from the property. They also, provided testimony to the commission about how the sound travels and the rate at which the decibel levels decay over time to ensure that they met the minimum noise requirements.
Change the road.
And they also changed the access road to meet city specifications because the city engineer concerns about the ability of emergency vehicles to access the site. The applicant revised the design to address that. And the city engineer, now city administrator, city engineer, at the time, he signed off on that, as did the assistant fire chief, and written testimonies in the record. So that's kind of, in other words, and then we've gone through maybe about 4 revisions or so of the application. And we arrived at the current position where we approved it.
Well, you touched all the corners. There's no
Yeah,
question.
very
I've read the work you guys did, and it's great. But we're here, to decide, is it an accessory use? And that's where the hang up is. For me, if I'm hearing things and seeing things, an accessory use is not a use that goes through a third party for me to get the benefit. It's direct. The other board members may feel differently. That's why we're asking.
I have a couple other questions.
Let's see if we can get around everybody, Peter, and then we'll get back to you.
So my opinion is that, a solar plant is not a typical college use. I mean, everybody can agree to that. And, I see this as, being I see it the same way the chair does. I see it as a power plant, it's generating power, being sold somewhere else. Where does it transmit to the nice side? Where does it go? I wasn't sure.
Sure, so there's, I think there's a connection at Sprague Road in the town. So it's one of those kind of rare projects that transcends town and city boundaries. So the connects into the power line at this, I think, Sprague Road in the town. And so the town is, was invited to participate as an interested agency under seeker, and they had no objections to the project.
Did they look at all, did they participate in?
Yeah, they did, and they.
Yeah, we did.
We did, and
Hang on for 1 second, let's see what the other board members think.
I think my biggest concern is the residential,
So our decision here is it an accessory use or not in our opinion? That's what we're gonna
think it's an
conclude.
accessory use.
You want to say it's an accessory use? Dave?
I don't know why it's in front of this board. That's,
They're looking for an interpretation of our zoning code, of whether.
that's what lawyers,
So,
that's what lawyers and engineers.
Obviously, I agree.
We're working these. Well, I'm not gonna say anything further right now.
Do you have a feeling?
I
I
have no questions.
So,
Peter?
I have a couple of questions and issues. One, why isn't Hartwood College here?
I don't know, because the planning commission is asking for an interpretation of our code.
Nexamp is here.
Nexamp's here.
Was it?
Nexamp is represented.
Well, that's good, because
They're the
you can
applicant.
answer one of my questions. But first is, I'd just like to have this on the record in case we do wind up in court. How many acres does this cover, the solar?
I think it's like 63 or something like
And
that.
how many acres on the Harvard College campus?
Couple hundred.
It's not-
Solar field was like 22.
The solar was like 22 acres, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they own more land than they occupy in Rome, so they
Let me
might
pull up
have
the
some,
number.
but they don't occupy.
Yeah, they have several. But it's like 100.
Let me pull up the negative declaration.
And their campus
Oh, I have it there, actually.
is their campus
It's
100 acres?
it's 26 out of 124.
That's the total land that Harvard College owns is 124.
No, that's the parcel, the Strawberry Fields parcel. And
So I'm talking about the whole campus.
Oh,
I don't have that.
that's
Number.
a lot bigger than.
It's more than that, a lot more.
Yeah, I think whether or not it's subordinate is based on those numbers.
Well, we can get that.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, and nobody here can answer this question. It's how much value will Harvard College be getting out of this use compared to all of their other income in money and any other values that it gets from all of the other uses on the campus? What proportion? In terms of how subordinate is this to the primary use?
I think that in terms of their balance sheet, it's a small fraction of their overall balance sheet.
I mean, I think another question could,
We don't have numbers to.
or another way to look at that, Peter, would be, it's not a solar field with a college, it's a college with a solar field. It's not Hardwick Solar Field, it's Hardwick College.
Yeah,
So like that's, I guess to me, much like Corning is not Green Spark Solar Field, it's Corning.
yeah.
I mean, they're clearly subordinate one to the other.
Yeah, that's the number I think is important to making a judgment as to whether this is subordinate, which is the primary thing in the definition of what an accessory use is. So you're from, what's the name of the company?
Nexamp.
Good evening. My name's Corey Auerbach. I'm from the law firm of Barclay Damon. We're the representatives for Nexamp for this project.
Okay, so my question for you is, can you clarify what Harvard College's relationship is to this solar farm? And I don't really like the idea of calling it a power plant, because that brings up all kinds of visions of toxic smokes and all, giant smokestacks and things like that. Sure. This is very different from that. So what should we call it? I think we should just call it a solar farm, because I like the term.
It's a ground mounted solar energy facility.
Okay, so how does the deal work with Harvard College?
Sure. So I've been sitting quietly. I wasn't sure if there was gonna be an opportunity for the public to speak. I know that this is the planning commission's application, so I was basically just waiting for an opportunity, so I appreciate you recognizing me. So Hartwood College is the lessee, the lessor for this. They're leasing the land to Nexamp, who will actually construct the project. Nexamp is participating in the community solar program through NYSERDA, which is an initiative that New York State has started to bring New York State to 80% renewable energy by 2030. So this is a proposal to bring a ground-mounted solar energy generating facility in conjunction with an educational use to generate solar energy for a clean energy, which then can be credited to subscribers, including Hartwood College, to reduce their energy costs on an annual basis. So they will be receiving, there's a contractual relationship, a lessor-lessee relationship, and then they will also be receiving credit for their energy bills from the energy that's generated from the project. And as you stated, there will be secondary educational opportunities for the students at Hartwood College as part of the solar energy generating facility. And I would note, although maybe I should wait for the chairman to return, that in the U district, pursuant to section 300-13C of the code, it actually makes an accommodation for what they refer to as accessory college uses are permitted, provided that the applicant demonstrates their accessory in nature to the college. So they treat accessory uses specially in the university district. 300-13B. Accessory college uses are permitted, provided that the applicant demonstrates it's accessory in nature to the college.
You're gonna want to repeat that when he comes back.
Sure. I don't know if I should wait or not.
Yeah, I would probably wait.
Okay. Can I answer it before I?
Well, I certainly think we should repeat that.
Okay.
You said 300-13B.
Yeah, it's under the zones defined section of the established.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
And then it provides some special use permit required uses as well.
I didn't know those.
Okay.
That line.
yeah, Steven said it was.
Well, another question I'd like to ask you, unless you'd rather keep going with that.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
If Hartwood College wanted to build their own solar farm,
Mhm.
just for Hartwood College, could they do that?
Of course. I mean, they would require the technical expertise associated with the technology, but yeah, of course.
Why would they go with you rather than do that themselves?
Because of Nexamp's experience as, a national provider of solar energy generating facilities, they have the specific technical expertise, not only to construct the facility, but to complete the Caesar studies and the other necessary requirements for interconnection to the grid and participation in NYSERDA's SUN program.
So I would imagine that Hartwood saves a lot of money by not creating their own solar farm.
Absolutely.
Because you're doing it and they're getting the benefit from being able to do it on their land.
Correct. And now that the chairman's returned, as I was saying, in the university district specifically, the code provides, as it relates to accessory uses in 300-13B, that accessory college uses are permitted, provided that the applicant demonstrates the use is accessory in nature to the college. And Chairman May, I get it. When you wrote this code a long time ago, no one was contemplating that, solar, ground-mounted solar facilities were going to be coming in. Or maybe there would have been an accommodation for that specifically delineated what an accessory use was. But the partnership between universities and green solar energy providers is pronounced across the state, across the country. And if you even just go to the United States Environmental Protection Agency's website, it includes a list of green power partnerships with the top 30 colleges and universities throughout the United States. And I won't read the whole list because there are 30 of the top that are on here, but I'll go down the list of colleges and universities that have partnership with green energy providers. University of California, Arizona State, Columbia, University of Buffalo, which has a beautiful solar farm that was done by Solar Liberty, Boston University, Stanford, University of Maryland, Georgetown, University of Arizona, University of Utah. And some of these have wind generating facilities, but some have small hydro facilities on them. But many of them are solar facilities. I mentioned University of Buffalo, which I was involved in, University of Maryland, University of Arizona, Carnegie Mellon University, Pennsylvania State University.
I want to interrupt you for a minute. Are all of these places things where the university has an agency, another agency that builds the solar and they get benefit back from them? Or are some of them universities or colleges that build their own?
I'm not aware of any college or university that has the wherewithal to construct, maintain, and operate their own solar generating facilities. It's an incredibly niche business that would take a remarkable amount of wherewithal for a university through their own maintenance and other staff to construct, run, and operate. Just the same way that universities don't build their own buildings or build their own stadiums, they would be constructing with a provider of, in this case, ground-mounted solar energy facilities with particular expertise to actually do that. And I think that the code enforcement officer, that is your title, sir. I think the code enforcement officer hit the nail on the head. This is a university that has a ground-mounted solar energy facility. It is not the primary use at this property. It is subordinate and incidental to the university. So I appreciate the distinction that you're drawing about energy generating facilities, but the code doesn't draw that distinction. The code merely states that it's incidental and it is and subordinate is accessory. The dominant or principal use here is clearly the university. And I think what sets this apart a little bit is that provision of code that I noted under the university district, which provides for college accessory uses. And I hope that the list that I ran through is demonstrative of the fact that green energy providers are partnering with universities because of all the secondary and tertiary benefits that they have as an educational institution, plus their commitment as an institute of higher learning to promote green energy sources, which is precisely why the New York State government put into place this objective to reach 80% of renewables by 2030. That's why they have this solar energy program with NYSERDA that Nexam participates with. And in fact, they're looking for colleges and universities and municipalities, quite frankly, to partner with, because there is a secondary benefit that comes to the community when participating in the New York Sun program, which is the ability to subscribe and actually reduce the energy cost for an institution, generally between 10 and 12% annually.
So what is the projected energy savings to Hartwick College from this project?
You'd have to ask Hartwood College that, but they have the ability to subscribe for up to 12%, I believe, of their energy needs annually. So every project, depending on its production, will generate a different amount of energy. But I'd anticipate that they will have a, not an insignificant savings, but certainly a savings that is a benefit to them in the long term, along with the other benefits that they receive, as were noted, which include the lease payment and the educational opportunities, plus just showing their stewardship to the environment and practicing what they preach of promoting green energy in furtherance of the state's goals.
Just while you were talking, we pulled up some of the other universities that are doing this, and even in Arizona, which is a much larger system and far more sunshine than we have here.
Yeah.
They're not able to produce 100% of their requirements there.
Oh, no, it would never be 100%. That would
There
be,
are some that are.
yeah.
I mean, I can read them off to you if you want. I've got them up there right now. Some are producing more than 100%.
From a community solar facility?
Yes, sir. They're actually selling back into the system, but
I need to
You know,
make a
that
distinction, Mr.
said-
Chairman, but quickly, I need to make a distinction because the community solar program is limited to 5 megawatt facilities.
yes, sir.
So I'm sure that there are I'm sure Arizona's facility is substantially larger than 5
Oh my
megawatt.
God, I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's bigger than the city of Oneonta.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, our concern is trying to find out, what an accessory use is, and we've kind of gotten off track of this a little bit. But there are other things that colleges do, to circumvent municipalities in which they live. They hire private companies to build dormitories on their campus, leased them the land, they build the dormitory, so they're tax-free. So they don't benefit the community one iota. There's no tax enhancement to this community for us saying, okay, build this, build that.
Well,
I mean-
residents of the city will be able to subscribe and receive a savings on their energy bill.
But they already can, as you well know.
Yeah,
There are a number of
but the
solar-
reason why they
solar
can is
farms that are
because of these similar facilities throughout the state. And you're right, Chairman, you're right. I share some of your concerns, but in this specific case, when we're talking about a use that's accessory to a university, a manufacturing facility that wanted this, or, someone else, but here, I think it's demonstrated, and you were able to find that information about Arizona very quickly with a quick Google.
No, she's fast.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, the benefits here are tremendous and the risks are none. And that's because they've already gone through an incredibly thorough, and I don't know these gentlemen, but I have to applaud them if they were involved in drafting the resolutions of the negative declaration, the site plan approval that I reviewed, which are voluminous and incredibly thorough. I was extremely impressed when I read them. This could not be argued by anyone that a thorough review did not take place. And, as to the limited question of whether it's accessory, which is why we're here, and I know that's where you were going, I think that this is definitely incidental. It is not the primary use. Hartwood College is the primary use. This is 25 acres of their multi-hundred-acre campus that is being utilized for this purpose. And in this specific case, I think it's pretty clearly incidental and subordinate to the college use.
There's no question. It's just, the question is, can they have a generator? You use that term, whether the generator, as I said before, is gas, oil, or sun, or when it's a generator.
I disagree. I don't think it is whether it's a generator. I think it's whether it is accessory to the college. And that's what 300-13B provides for, is college accessory use. It treats it differently, Mr. Chairman, than other accessory uses.
There's no question.
It carves out a specific niche college accessory use.
Yes.
We've demonstrated colleges and universities across the country have solar energy generating facilities. It's not unusual. It's, in fact, it's becoming the norm. And I hope that the rest of the board would agree, even if I'm unable with my rhetoric to convince you, Mr. Chairman, because you make a very strong point, that the rest of the members of this body would agree this is clearly incidental to the college.
I don't really have a strong opinion. I have observations.
And I share some of them, as I have throughout the evening as I've been sitting here, but in this case, if you look at the letter of the code, in my view, it's absolutely accessory to the college in this case.
The letter of the code is mute on this point. That's the problem.
Well, it's moot on exactly what it is, whether it specifically is, but what I tried to relate was, let's take it outside the code for a second and just say, is a solar generating facility accessory to a college or university? And I read a list of 30 of them where they have them, and there are many, many more. So I think customarily, even though that's not in the code, as you noted, it is incidental and subordinate.
They don't say that they're incidental or subordinate as they've gone through the universities that have them. Some of them clearly sponsored them and paid for them as part of their academic mission, and some have brought in companies like the ones you represent to do the work for them, much like the construction of dormitories.
Well, regardless of how it was paid for or what the financial relationship was, the use itself, that's all I'm talking about. Not how it's made, not how it's built, not who built it, but the use itself, which is what we're discussing, of ground mounted solar, it's accessory to a college. It's what colleges do these days.
The colleges do it all the time, but is it, I have a very, very simple distinction at my residence. It's 100% benefits me, no one else.
Is
It's
it
clearly accessory? The
Yeah.
college is making a deal with another company to build a generator, and then has a repurchase agreement for power, and they have a lease agreement for the land.
And if the legislature of the town, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. The legislature of the town wants to change the accessory use definition to say subordinate and incidental, except if it benefits other people, they can do that. But right now, it doesn't say it. So all we have is what's there. Is it subordinate and incidental or not? I don't think that it could be argued that a solar generating facility is not incidental and subordinate to a college when they are all over the country.
But they are not the owner of it.
But the code doesn't say subordinate and incidental if they're the owner. It just says subordinate and incidental, just the use.
That's why you're here, and we can amplify
That's fair.
that, and we can add that language to that, and then that becomes part of the code.
That's fair, but if we're gonna be
That's what this
technical,
board does.
if we're gonna be technical, Chairman May, if it's ambiguous, if the code is not clear,
Yes,
the law requires that it be interpreted in favor of the applicant and against the municipality who drafted it.
yes.
Zoning being a derogation of the common law requires you to analyze it in favor of the university. So if you agree it's clear, I think that.
I understand your argument. I understand Mr. Lappin's position. I've listened to the neighbors, you know.
And I
this
understand
thing has
yours.
consumed more time than frankly I've spent in 18 years.
Fair
in
point.
this chair.
Fair point.
Not if you put all the short-term rental applications.
When you put them all together, Peter, you're right.
You know, I think,
Yeah, hang on, Jeff, go ahead.
I guess I have a question that I need you to clarify for me. Listening to the conversation, what I'm hearing is Harvard College is leasing a piece of land to a third-party company who's doing a solar project, who will then use Harvard College as a vehicle to make it possible, as well as using the grid to transfer that energy, part of which they can sell to someone other than Harvard.
Other people other than Harvard can subscribe to the New York Sun program, for which the energy from this project will be put into the grid for.
I'm having some difficulty now viewing this as an accessory use for Hardwick, although they are using some of the power.
Yeah.
They are using the wording from the code to allow this to happen to a third party that they will benefit partially from, as well as the energy company will use the grid to get the power out.
All of the energy produced will go into the grid. That's the way that the New York Sun program works.
Yes.
It's generated by the solar panels and it goes through an interconnection and into the electric grid. All solar energy in the entire state does that, except if someone is directly metered to a facility. In the New York Sun program, which this is a part of, it all goes into the grid and then is credited back to subscribers. But Hartwick College here is in essence like a co-applicant. This is a partnership between Hartwick College and a solar provider who has the expertise to actually build and operate the facility. So in that way, it is a project that Hartwick College is sponsoring along with the solar provider.
So just to build off of that, you know, to clarify, the Hartwick College is acting as the anchor tenant in this agreement, meaning that they're using the maximum amount of energy credits generated by the facility that's allowable under the state program. That's kind of where we were. That's kind of the way we arrived. And that was the same determination that the ZBA arrived at with regard to Corning. Stephen had said that Corning has a similar agreement where they use approximately 40% of the energy credits generated by the array, and 60% is sold off to subscribers via PPA. So it's essentially the same thing. So if it were allowable to go use more energy under the current community solar program, then they could conceivably do that. But under the current structure of the New York Sun program, they use the maximum amount. That's kind of where we arrived at in the planning commission's opinion, that it was an accessory use, in addition to all the other facts that the attorney from Next had.
But I don't want to get clouded on the technicalities of how the energy is produced and sent back into the grid. We're talking simply about a land use right now. And that land use is this solar facility. That is the use of the land. That's what we're here to discuss. Is that use accessory to the college or not? Is it incidental and subordinate to the college? And as I noted, don't take my word for it. Take the Environmental Protection Agency's word for it. There are many colleges and universities across this country that have solar energy generating facilities on their campus, because these are subordinate and incidental to colleges in today's day and age. So answering the question of whether this is a college accessory use, and I'm distinguishing that because that's what the code says, college accessory use. Yes, this is clearly a college accessory use, or you wouldn't see it at dozens, if not hundreds of other colleges and universities across the country.
Respectfully, I don't think you can make that decision because you don't know the ownership or the arrangements at the other colleges.
And nor do I need to, because we're talking about land use.
You do, because many of these colleges not only sponsored it, but built it as part of their academic program. They had other input. I mean, I've already done a little research on this. They didn't go to a third-party provider and say, hey, we've got some land, would you build me a generator?
Many of them
Many of them
have.
do.
I've personally done them myself, Mr. Chairman.
No, many of them do it.
But the issue is not about, this is simply about land use. Is the land use accessory to the college or not? It's not about who owns it or who runs it or who builds it. It's just about, is it an accessory land use?
Well, this board also has another responsibility that's not being talked about here, and that is to protect the general character of the neighborhood in which it sits.
Not in this case, it isn't, Mr. Chairman. In this case,
I would
if you're
respectfully disagree.
well, in this case, your obligation is to make an interpretation of the plain letter of the wording of the code. There is nothing having to do with health, safety, or general welfare involved in an interpretation appeal. This was a variance, a use variance, or an area variance. Protecting the health, safety, and general welfare is absolutely within the purview of this board. But this is a strict legal interpretation of statutory terms to which no deference is required by the zoning board, nor is any consideration of health, safety, and general welfare for that matter. That was a consideration for the planning board.
Didn't say it was for consideration by the planning commission.
The planning commission, in fact, did take the health, safety, and general welfare into account, determined there would be no potentially significant environmental impact from the project, analyzed it pursuant to the criteria in the code, and made a determination in favor of the project. I want you to forget the project. I want you to forget those things. I just want you to say, is this incidental and subordinate to the college or not? Like it is at so many other colleges across the country. Not who built it, not who owns it, not who runs it, not how it operates, just land use.
I will give you that it's incidental and subordinate.
Deal.
I will not give you that it's accessory.
Well, you give
That's
me
what we're
incidental
gonna
and
discuss.
subordinate. If you agree it's incidental and subordinate, we're on the same page.
You know, it is that. I mean, you can be hard pressed to argue it. So someone is tuned in and wants to speak.
I think that's another Nexamp representative.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see what she has to say.
Liza.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Someone calls.
Can you hear me?
We can. Can you hear us?
No, so you can't call the question.
Yes. It's just lagging for a second, but I believe I can. To introduce myself, hi, I'm Liza Schatz. I am a business development manager at Nexamp, and I've been presenting this project throughout the various planning board meetings. And there is one clarification that I just wanted to make regarding how the project is plugged into the grid. And although I don't believe this changes the use of the solar farm. However, I'll just share a little bit of history of the project, which should share some insight into this. We looked into a few different options of how we can use solar on Hartwest College to benefit the college. One of which was net metering, so behind the meter. In order to do this, we would have to have different solar panels local to each of the buildings, and it would cost the college a lot more money and would produce less energy and less savings for the college, which is how we landed on having a large solar farm, which would need to be community solar in order to plug in that energy into the existing grid so that the college could then receive the energy, the energy credits for cost savings as they do now, rather than setting up different equipment at each building and feeding the energy that way. I'm not sure if that explanation clearly depicts the difference here, but behind the meter was looked into as an option. And this community solar 5 megawatt AC solar farm was landed upon because of the increased benefit to the college in terms of savings for their energy usage year by year. And also for the accessory use, the college did submit a letter to the planning commission, which was included in some of the minutes, outlining the various uses of the various benefits to the college that the solar farm has, one of which being the sizable savings year to year of these energy credits. But there was also the environmental sustainability, as this aligns with Hartwick College commitment to sustainability and minimizing their carbon footprint, and also the educational plan that Nexamp, on behalf of Hawk Hill Solar and Hartwick College, has put together, which affords the college an important component of this project, which will incorporate the solar system into the curriculum for college classes and the different data acquisition system provided to Hartwick College as part of this project, which collects and reports the real-time system performance and weather data from the site. So I just wanted to make that difference between the behind the meter energy feed versus the community solar.
Thanks, Lida.
So,
Anybody thoughts on what you just said?
yeah, my thought on what you just said is that with just the educational use alone, this would qualify. as-
So that's an important question, Peter. I mean, because the code just says college uses, so I mean, we can debate accessory versus primary use, but at the end of the day, we have to determine then, well, what is a college use, because it's also not defined in the code. So the only thing we can really fall back to is the general description of the zoning district, which describes the university zone as things that help the college and things that the college does. So I mean, even if this is an accessory use, or even if it's primarily a college use, the code is equally undefined and vague on what each of those uses might be and what classifies as a college use, outside of just the general description of the zone.
But, you know, I see, you're saying that whether it's an accessory use or not, it's a college use. Because of that.
I think, and if it's a college use, it falls under the U zone right now.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that position has been put forward by anyone.
Yeah.
And I think that was as much as I hate to say this out loud, that really becomes the trump card.
Because if you look at the Vulcan use table,
It's allowed. As part of the education program, and that's what Liza just said.
it's the third item on the list, college and accessory college uses.
No one said that before today, out loud, to this board at all. That's a game changer. All right, well, with that said, I think that they have the ability to go forward without any further interpretation from this board. They have now said it is part of their education program. Or their representative said that. I assume you will all get in line behind that and march in lockstep.
I don't see anybody here that marches in lockstep with anything.
So, I mean, I don't know what we have to talk about anymore.
Well, the only question then is the motion to approve it as a college use only, or as a college
They
use
don't-
and an accessory use?
They don't, if they're using it as part of their.
No, he's asking for interpretation.
So they don't,
Code
but
says.
you know, I
The
think the chairman,
interpretation is that it's no longer an accessory use, it's part of the college program, which is what we were just told. That's allowed in the U zone.
so I think the zoning board can decide that, you know, that it falls under a different use category as the chairman suggests.
Right.
You know, and I'm fine with that, honestly. You know, the only reason we had asked for interpretation was because we were following the ZBA's prior determination and just wanted a verification before we issued an approval.
We laid that out there, so you follow that rabbit.
And then, so this other way is easier. If it would, whatever way gets this thing across. I'm not gonna hold on. Anymore.
It's not easier. She said what had to be said.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one else has said before. So right there, you know, it's allowed. And so the only admonition I would offer is talk to your neighbors and make them happy if you can. It's all, but you already said you've bent over backwards. They may not agree.
We need official action.
So
We still need action.
I don't think we have any more play here. Does anyone think we do?
So in terms of the site plan approval, what we'll do is we'll make a revision outlining the outcome of tonight's meeting and then reapprove it at our subsequent planning commission meeting.
Right.
Do we need to do that?
What?
Do we need to do that?
Yeah, we do. Because we made our site plan approval contingent on the interpretation.
You want to go for the interpretation as opposed to saying this is.
No, I don't. No, what I'm saying is that since the ZBA has stated its position, I need to revise the site resolution of site plan approval to reflect the outcome of the meeting.
So any board member have any objection to this?
No.
Mr. Chairman,
We took a long way around to get there.
may I be heard very briefly?
Yep, absolutely.
No, thank you. Just a suggestion, and feel free to reject it, but would it make sense to put on the record that the applicant withdraws its request for an interpretation because of the board's determination that
I have no problem doing that.
that no further use determination was required because the use was authorized essentially. This way, there's something in the record memorializing the decision.
This is audio, video, and
Okay.
there will be a transcript. We're not as lax as we used to be.
Very good, very good. I just wanted
If you
to,
want something more formal than that,
I'd love to get something on the record
I
that,
have no problem with
yeah.
it.
We take you to the state, or we are withdrawing.
Well, yeah, so I guess to satisfy the gentleman's request, the planning commission formally requests that the request for interpretation be withdrawn. With the condition that we revise,
With the
understanding that we will revise our site plan approval to reflect the appropriate provisions of the city of Oneonta zoning code, which classifies the proposed project as a university use, educational use, college use. And we'll cite the appropriate provisions of the code.
And that solves your problem.
Pretty much. That was the easier way.
Is there any more that you'd like to have? Is that adequate for you?
Nothing more than just my gratitude to the board for your time.
Very good. Thank you all for coming. Is there any other actions that appear before the board this evening? We have no applications for December, so we'll know everyone's concurrent with the December meeting. This is what we do on a regular or less regular basis. Ma'am? Okay. Well, that's what I'm about to do. I've been doing this now for about 17, 18 years, and I've decided it's time to step down, so I'm submitting my resignation to the mayor as of tomorrow.
As much as the pain in the ass you did over the years, you got a great job.
That's in fact. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.
No, it just gets older. Are we close? So, do we need a motion to adjourn? So moved.